To work a crochet reinforced steek, you're going to need a couple of things. You need your project with the steek stitches. This is the halibut cardigan. In this one, the button bands have already been knitted on. That's optional. You can do it before or after performing the steek. It's kind of nice to do it before because then you can kind of line them up better, more easily. So on this pattern, we have 5 steek stitches worked in. So 5 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means we're going to be cutting our steek open down the center of this middle stitch. Depending on the pattern you're working, you might have an even number of steek stitches worked into your pattern. And if that were the case, you'd be cutting between the 2 center. Let me zoom in a little bit. So what we're going to do is cut right down the center of this V in the center stitch, but if you had an even number of steek stitches, you'd be cutting between 2 rows of stitches. Just so you know, you can do it either way, it doesn't really matter. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reinforcing 2 rows of stitches so that they don't unravel once we cut it open. So what you're going to need is a crochet hook that's like a size or 2 smaller than the needle you used for knitting your project. Try not to hook your project like I just did. And then a yarn in a color that's contrasting, similar weight, maybe a little bit thinner. You want something fairly sturdy. You don't want it to break easily. You might want it to be a color that looks good with your project, depending on if you're going to cover it up. It is going to be inside your project, so it's not going to show a lot, but in case it does, it's nice if it sort of goes. So what we want to do is we're going to start at the bottom edge, which is the cast on edge. Depending on the pattern you're working on, you might have knit from the top down, and in that case, you'd want to start wherever your cast on edge was. So if you knit from the top down, you'd want to start at the top. But we're going to be starting at the bottom because this is worked from the bottom up. And we want to identify, this is the stitch that's getting cut open right down the middle. And what we want to do is we want to join together the stitches on the right and the left. So the leg of this guy and the leg of this guy, the whole way up. And then we're going to come back down and get the 2 on the other side of it so that they're nice and, secure together. They don't come apart. And we want to start on the right hand side because with this method, the crochet steek or the crochet reinforcement that you make leans to the right. And if you were to do it the other way, it would lean the wrong way, and then it would be harder to cut open because you'd have the steeks like getting in your way, and it just harder. You'll see once we do it, they like spread open nicely and make it a lot easier to see where you're going to cut. So to start, let's zoom in a little bit more just so you guys can see really well. All right. So this is our middle guy that we're going to cut. So we want to stick our crochet hook in the bottom of our knitting right next to it there. And then we're going to pull through a loop of yarn. You don't need a very long tail, just a little bit. I mean like 5 inches maybe. And then you're going to want to pull that through and then bring through a loop of yarn. I'm not a good crocheter, so you're probably going to be better at this than me. Anyway, so you bring that through just so now you've got a little kind of sturdy little, anchor down there at the bottom. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work our way up, joining the 2 legs next to each other the whole way up. So this is the very first row here. So I'm going to grab, starting with the leg on the right and the leg on the left of the center stitch. So not the whole stitch of either one, just half of each stitch. So I've got both of those on my crochet hook along with the loop that we made when we first started. Now we're just going to pull a loop through those 2 legs of the stitch. Now I've got 2 loops and I'm just going to pull a loop through those. There, and now we're just going to go up to the next stitch. This steek was worked in a checkerboard pattern, so you can identify the stitches that you're working by alternating colors. If you worked it in a stripe, you'd be getting the opposite colors. You can do it either way, stripe or checkerboard, or sometimes it's just a solid color depending on what you're working on, but It makes it easier to see which legs you need to grab if you do some type of a pattern like checkerboard or stripes. So now I'm just going to do the same thing on the next stitch up the row, one row up, one loop through, and yeah, you probably get faster at this as you go. Hopefully you're faster than me. I am just not a fast crocheter. I'll work a few. Just make sure you're getting just the one leg of each stitch. Pull it through both of those guys. As you can see, it's starting to lean away already, and you're kind of exposing that kind of central ladder legs of that middle stitch, and that's where you're going to cut. And I'm just going to keep going all the way up to the top. So we've made it all the way to the top edge on our first side of our crochet reinforcement. So what I'm going to do when I get to the top is I'm just going to insert my crochet hook through that top stitch, kind of like what we did on the bottom, pull a loop through, and pull a loop through both of those, and then cut the yarn with a little bit of a tail, doesn't need to be real long, and just thread it through that loop and cinch it tight. So that's one side of the crochet reinforcement. Now to do the second side, we are going to flip our project over so that we are working down the other side. Since the reinforcement is going to lean to the right, now this one, since we flipped it, it's leaning to the left, and it'll pull away from each other. You can see it's already starting to happen, like those little legs there, what we're going to cut. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did before on this side. Okay, after you've finished crocheting both sides, you'll have this nice little thing and you can see it's pulled apart, and all you have here in the middle is just that ladder in the middle of that center stitch, and that's where you're going to cut. One thing you should do before you do your crochet steek is weave in any ends that are in the middle away from the steek, so ends get woven away from the cutting area. You should do that before you cut, probably before you put the crochet reinforcement on. But all right, now you grab your scissors. All I have is these little ones because I don't know where my other ones are right now, but you just find your courage and you start cutting. Just cut those little ladder legs. You kind of pull it as you go. It's very fun, in my opinion. All right, and now it's open. And then what you do is you're just going to finish the inside. You can weave in the ends. I haven't quite done all my ends yet, but this could either get woven in or you can just trap it. You're going to fold your steek back, and then you can either like stitch it down with yarn. You can use a piece of ribbon over top and stitch it over it just to secure it, because otherwise, but you can see it's really nice and secure. It's not coming undone. Nice and tidy. And that's it. That's the steek. Isn't that fun? And then you can put your buttons on or whatever you need to do. The end.